Hey there, it's CJ Miller. How's everybody doing? Okay, so I am in Shreveport, Louisiana. It's Shreveport out there. And it's across the Red River from beautiful Bossier City, Louisiana. And also, Shreveport's pretty beautiful too, I think. Why don't you come check us out? Come see us. If you get here and you uh, need some ideas on what to do, look me up if you're coming through, and I will find some stuff that will pique your interest. We really do have a lot of things, you know. Um, yeah, so um, yeah, we have things that can appeal to just about anybody, really. Okay, so and yeah, um, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about the movie The Flash. Now, I've already talked about it. I'm going to talk about it, and I'm not going to do any spoilers. But I've been reading online. I know there was one guy, Riley, you something with CinemaCon, something I don't know, something one of these online articles, and he was like, I went to see the movie as a casual DC observer. And that is lovely. Except when you go see a movie, and you go see it because you're going to write a review and submit it and you're going to get paid for writing an article. That's not casual observance. And when you're doing that, when you're writing for money, you're speaking to an audience, and so you're trying to get a readership. You're trying to get submission. You're trying to get someone to pick up your submission and buy it, and so you're going to write and try to fit into whatever online tabloid review thing or whatever is going to buy your thing. So it was a pretty pleasant review, but it wasn't a casual observance, uh, but it was written to speak to the casual DC movie thing, but it wasn't written by a casual. I went to casually. No, that person went in knowing what he was going to write. He went in knowing what to expect because spoilers were already out there, uh, and then he came away with a really positive review, even though he wasn't like wow, like fanboyed out like I was. I'm a DC person. I guess let put it like this: when Batman versus Superman came out, I went to see that movie in the theater probably about 5 times, at least twice in 3D. Um, and that was because first, it was the first DC movie crossover that was DC Comics and that was going to be based on DC comic characters in a theater crossing over for the first time. And that's what drew me. Um, you know, And yeah, that movie, whoa, like it was big, it was huge. Um, and then there was like some critics, and kind of like, uh, you know. But here's the thing: when you have something like a comic book movie, our comic book fans, we are really even though I don't go out and I buy them every week. When I was a kid, I felt very strongly attached to that material. When I was a teenager and I was reading comic books, my favorite era was the Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985, uh, and I mean, I consumed every um, just every issue that I could get a hold of, and um, all the tie-ins because everything that year was all about cleaning house, for DC and everything. So I felt really strongly connected to these characters because I'd started collecting just a couple of years before, and I started out collecting uh, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman at Marvel. Uh, um, and because we had a KB drug that became later on it became Eckerd's. rebranded as Eckerd's, but they had like the magazine rack with the spinning. So I would go there and I would spend my little allowance buying comic books because it was right down the street from where I lived. So I could go, like, my mother worked in the mall, so I could go hang there with my older sister. And this was like third, fourth grade. And it was kind of okay. Everything and everybody in the neighborhood knew everybody. And everybody kind of looked out for each other's kids and stuff like that. It was okay, you know. And yeah, I mean, literally, it was like 2 blocks from the house, like, you know, like 2.5 blocks, and a parking lot in our little mall, in our little neighborhood. So it was safe, you know. But yeah, I would go there and I'd buy my comic books, and one of those places I'd spend my little allowance, my little $5 a week allowance, on the weeks that we could afford it. I would get $5, and the comic books, I loved them. I loved them. It was like, oh my god, this is for me. These comic books are written, and they're written with me in mind. And Wonder Woman, honestly, just because she was like the first superhero in the '70s that I could see in real life. Because the Hulk scared the shit out of me, and Spider Man uh, didn't last very long, and didn't hold the attention because, I mean, yep. Spider-Man was shooting ropes, it wasn't webs. It was shooting ropes. It's a joke. I make jokes, bad jokes. Sometimes I say I shoot ropes all the time. Nobody calls me a superhero, but that's a bad joke. I don't really say that too much in front of people, but a little good humor, even if it's a little blue, doesn't hurt. I don't make videos for children, by the way. So anyway, but yeah, I'm just passing some time, just a little bit. What I want to do is I want to talk about how if they'll come in and they'll criticize and they'll say things like, "Hey, at first this movie, The Flash, it had some previews before it opened, and I even saw it on Thursday instead of on the opening Friday. It opened actually. They usually open here on a Thursday these movies. So I don't know if they're counting opening weekends. I don't know if they're counting preview shows or not. But the audience that I saw it with, it wasn't a full on theater, the Flash movie, but I was there. I was there with a friend. It was a movie that you go see with friend. I will go see it by myself if I didn't have a friend. But firstly, I would ask people, "Hey, my friends, hey, do you want to go see it? I'm going to the very first showing that I can get a hold of." And luckily, I had a friend who was available. He was getting off work on the boardwalk at 3 o'clock. I met him at his job. We walked over. We saw the movie. And it was great. And I'm like, oh my God. Because when I go see a movie, I get immersed. Like, I want I want to go there. I want to sit in the dark for a few minutes and talk some smack while we listen to some background music because we've already gotten our snacks or whatever. And so if we have time or whatever, I want to get there, get comfortable and get into it. I want to own the damn space, that I'm sitting in. I want to claim it. I want to feel it so that uh, so that it's mine, so that I'm at home, And then, they come on with the previews and they start talking their crap, this is this and this. And what they have to do is they have to get you in the mindset of how, what a special experience actually coming to a theater and a movie is for cinemaphiles that just love movies. And I do. I'm a movie buff, but I don't go see every damn movie that's out there because also I live on a budget. But I do love movies, so. But I love that. I love that. When I was a kid, I spent it. If it was a movie that I wanted to go see and I could afford to go see it, I would go see it because I lived near a theater. And then later on, we moved from the mall, which there was a movie theater in that mall where my mall St. Vincent or St. Vincent Mall, whichever. There was an I think it was an AMC, and they had about 4 movie theaters, 4 different theaters in there. So I would go see it. I loved it. And then we moved across town, and we no longer had access to that Mall St. Vincent that we could walk to, but we weren't that far away from the Joy Cinema 6. And then later on, they added another theater. They built on and added another screens that became Joy Cinema 7. But that was that's where you would go see a movie theater after it had already made the rounds. It had already played the other places, you know. And back then they didn't have like big mega movie plexes like they do right now, where you go someplace and there's like 14 screens, and right now there's not enough movies out at any given time to fill up 14 screens, you know. So you might have one movie. Think about this: you'll have one movie and showing on three different screens, staggered 40 minutes apart. So you actually don't have to rush in and fill up an entire movie theater, you know. Uh, like we used to, uh, because they're all taking place in like one or two parts of town, whereas they used to be staggered. When I was growing up, we had that one, and then Valley View was that Joy Cinema, and then there was Eastgate, and then there was Quail Creek. So that's at least four. Then there was two or three in Bossier. So there was about 8 or 9 different movie theaters, that showed movies. And now there's three. We have the Robinson Film Center downtown, which is uh, primarily, art theater, and it gives a lot, anything that's making the festivals and stuff like that. Of course, it gets the occasional big theatrical release also. Anything that's culturally relevant in any sort of way, and they do. Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's cool. I actually upstairs there's a restaurant, Abby Singer's Bistro. It's my favorite restaurant downtown. But anyway, and then of course we have the Boardwalk Theater that I've talked about, and then there is a theater in South Shreveport, two megaplexes, and then one art theater. Three of them have filled uh, the the role that about 10 different movie theaters used to fill. So it's not like when I was a kid I could just walk down the block or something like that and go see a movie. Today I've got to travel for it. Actually, I do live close to two movie theaters. That's why I love to live downtown. But anyway, yeah, I love movies. And when I was a kid, I really developed a love of movies. Today, I go see the ones that I really, really, really want to see, and I know I need to see it. And they kind of like gave high hopes, and there's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good talk going on about the Flash. I loved it. I think it was everything that I expected and then some. Even if it wasn't entirely perfect, because I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect movie. I think the closest would have been probably The Exorcist, which is a near perfect interpretation of its source material. You know, but and then of course I just reshared something from the Ninth Configuration, which was the novel that William Peter Blatty wrote shortly after The Exorcist, which was actually a spiritual sequel, or actually connected to The Exorcist, because the astronaut who Reagan told he was going to die up there in space uh, in the movie, in the novel, that astronaut flips the fuck out at the beginning of the Ninth Configuration, and the rest of the movie is spent in the asylum where he's being treated, along with the whole cast of other characters. And Richard Miller is there, but he's not playing the priest. He's playing another character, obviously. Um, but my fan theory, is that it actually could have been the priest dug himself up from the grave, because I don't think they met. The astronaut did not meet Karras. So Karras could have dug himself up as the Gemini killer, and he could have been in this uh, asylum, you know, uh, putting his mind back together. The Gemini killer putting Karras's mind back together, uh, and then he shows back up in Legion. That's my theory on that. But anyway, this is about the Flash. The Flash. It's not a perfect movie. It's a really good movie, and so I mean, I'm really glad, and I gave it the rating of uh, seeing it. What did I know? Standard screening or something like that. It wasn't available in 3D. If it was, I would have seen it in 3D. Uh, but I think it was just a standard screening or standard theater or standard seating or something like that. I mean, that's what was available. Uh, some movies, it's like, hey, I'll be just wait and pay a matinee. No, no, no. I went to see this one the first time out, you know, and anticipation and everything, and I knew that I was gonna love it. Uh, I love the trailers. I would rate the trailers. Blue Beetle was pretty damn sweet. The trailer for that one. I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to, um, yeah. No, I wish we could get like a really, really good slasher movie. We don't really do slashers anymore. I think we're overdue for a good Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, a Hellraiser, or something like that. A good startup of a horror movie franchise. You know, but here's the thing: horror movies that feature kids and young teens playing teens, they're not really scary because even if the whole "you can't kill a kid" rule is out, you can now. I mean, it killed a kid in the first movie. You could kill your darlings. In a movie like you've always been able to kill your darlings. It means that when you have an endearing character, don't be afraid to knock it off. Uh, Marion Crane from Psycho. We follow her through half the movie, and she's there, and we think the movie is about her, and then it's like she's dead. Kill your darlings. That's what it means. So you can do that with kids now, but you still can't really just torture the hell out of them. I'm not talking about just getting someone and torturing them to death or anything like that, but you can't do like a real grimy uh, Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of thing with the children being, you know, teens and you can't do that. There was a movie back in the 70s, something called "There's Something Wrong with the Children," where they got like brainwashed. That was pretty cool. Let's see. Uh, Let me just take my little thing. It says I'm getting a message. It tells me that my battery is low, and I'm like, well, I'll just plug the thing back in because I'm not finished. I'm not ready to finish yapping or talking yet. Okay, cool. So, and yeah, so now I'm talking about horror movies. when what my intention in bringing this up in the first place was to talk about how the tabloids were bouncing this flash back and forth, saying it had kind of a weak opening. It's even been suggested that it's bombed. I think it's. I read compared numbers. I mean, I think it really is up there. It's right up there with Aquaman, the first Aquaman, which was one of the most praised of the DC movies. You had uh, Man of Steel, which was a little, people liked it. I think people were just looking forward to a good Superman movie by the time it came out. I never thought that movie was my best representation of Superman, and they kind of lightened him up a little bit, like Batman versus Superman. It was great, but towards the middle of it, after the Batman and Superman showed it, they kind of sort of lightened it up a little bit. You know what I mean? Some of the dialogue, yeah, we know it's cheesy. My mother's name is Martha. Don't kill me, But I don't think it was. I don't think it was a bad plot point. I think it was the way that it was. I think it was the way that it was delivered. I think it was the way that it was delivered. You know, uh, like you're letting him kill Martha. That's not. They could have done it in a smarter way, and then it would have worked. you know, like as they're beating the crap out of each other, they could be like, "You have no idea what it was like for me growing up. You're not even a real," and they can be like, as they're smashing each other, comparing notes about their life and what made them. I'm not here to be. You're just trying to be a glory hound, or you're just trying to be a god, or you're just, and as they're fighting, they could be getting into what made them who they are, and then they can get into, you know. The values. They kind of sort of did that in a juxtaposition, but they were just not looking at the fact that they're similar, in a lot of ways, because it wasn't the fact that Clark's earthly parents gave him such good values. They did, but he lost his father. He was very close, and his father died, um, believing that he was going to become the Superman or whatever, without that name, but the hero who's going to do something that was going to change the world. And he wasn't ready to be revealed because at that age, maybe the world would have altered it or whatever. Displaying the human frailty of emotion that Clark has of everything. So but he was close to his father, and he lost his father, and of course, Bruce lost both of his parents. So it wasn't even so much about the name Martha; it was about the loss and the suffering. And of course, this movie, The Flash, gets into that. It's our scars that make us who we are. If we've seen the trailers, we know that line is there. You know, and then so yeah, it's good. Um, and there's always going to be people to nitpick a movie apart. I am someone who's kind of a nitpicker. For instance, why the hell did they send Clark to Earth with the Codex inside of him when Krypton was going to be blown the hell up in the first place in Man of Steel, right? I mean, and then Zod and his army or whatever. I mean, they had been sent into the Phantom Zone. They weren't supposed to escape the Phantom Zone. I mean, that wasn't foreseen. Uh, as a matter of fact, they were supposed to uh, twirl around from the Phantom Zone and look upon what was left of Krypton from the Phantom Zone, from that dimension that was the Phantom Zone or whatever. So I mean, they weren't supposed to escape it, um, but they did. Uh, so anyway, um, and it wasn't the explosion that set him free. I was talking with somebody earlier where I was having the same point, and it's like, whatever. They used a warp engine to change it to create an exit warp to get them out of the Phantom Zone. But seriously, they weren't foreseen to have escaped the Phantom Zone. So, it's like, if that's the case, why even bother with the Codex inside of Clark, the future of um, the Kryptonian people? I mean, what the hell was he supposed to do with it? Live with it, and then it die with him when he died? Because I mean, yeah, I was just like, what? And then we were having this whole like geeky conversation. My friend and I texted back and forth. But there's the other planet that they were at war with, and they're kind of Kryptonian. They're kind of Kryptonian-ish, and this and that, and blah blah blah, and kind of like the twin world of Krypton, and what's they're warring people. If there was a possibility, uh, why didn't they just send Clark over there? You know, we just reach in for like reasoning. You know what I mean? So I can pick apart a movie, but I really just did not want to pick apart the Flash. I mean, it's um, there's a lot of good things about it, and you know what? Um, it's easy to see where maybe they thought the movie was going to go at one point in some direction, and then maybe they kind of like did this whole Casablanca thing where they were talking about, does he get on the plane? Does he not get on the plane? That kind of thing, where they kind of go back and forth about what's the ending going to be. You can sort of tell with this, they were kind of like, we're not sure what the ending is going to be, and that's something we'll just decide at the last minute. It's got to be this. This is what it's got to be. It's kind of got that. It's kind of got that ending to it. Like, okay, what's it got? We got this. We got the story. We got it. Now we've got to bring this to a close, to an ending. What are we going to do with it? You know what I mean? Um, this is not people have talked about multiverse movies. The same writer, there was a writer uh, that I started to mention that talked about he went to see the movie as a casual observer. He also went on to talk about it seems like every movie is a is a multiverse movie. Well, no, it's just that he's seen a lot of Marvel movies. That's what he said. Uh, and right now, that's the story that Marvel is telling in this Phase 4 and 5 thing. That's comic books have done that. DC did it first with Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think so. From my memory, 1985. I already talked about that. And I'm going to start going back to the comic book store locally here, Excalibur, and maybe starting to collect some of those 1985, 86 comic books or Crisis on Infinite Earths, and we'll see what's up. But anyway, hello again. It's like, hello. Um, I had to shift position and, you know. Anyway, uh, what was I saying? Oh yeah, the Flash. Oh, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and did the multiverse and stuff like that. So the guy was saying multiverse, and it seems like every movie's a multiverse. Well, the only other movie outside of the comic book, the Marvel's been the one to do it, and they've talked about, I think, in Justice League, Zack Snyder's Justice League. The Joker was like talking about, I wonder how many people and how many universes have died because you haven't been anything other than blah blah blah. Bruce, you send people out to die. That kind of dialogue that he had with them. If you've seen it on Max, it was HBO Max. It actually was the launching of HBO Max was uh, the launching of uh, Justice League. I'll tell you that I subscribed to HBO Max just to watch the Justice League movie. Uh, and then for a while I did, and I was like, I seen it, and it's like great. Now I don't need to. I think maybe I hung out long enough to watch uh, Wonder Woman 1984 and Justice League, and then I didn't subscribe. Then I didn't subscribe for a while, but that DC hub that's on there is still pretty awesome. Uh, there's still room on my dance card left for some DC shows. There's a lot of DC content. I do wish for more, so I want more uh, Max. I want some more content. Uh, yeah, so I'm getting to a point that I need to kind of wrap this up. I'm going to get to the points. Um, the guy gave a good review of the movie, talked about the multiverse, everything, everywhere, all at once. That was a movie about a multiverse that didn't have anything to do with the comic books or anything like that, but it was mostly about the relationship between the mother and the daughter. And that's what that was about. It wasn't about. It was about the relation. It was about the relationship between the mother and the daughter, uh, and how they were coming to terms with old tradition meets new values, and the parent allowing the child to uh, mature into the adult that they're going to be without having to worry about oh, now how are people going to look at this if you don't look, act, feel, or behave a certain way? How is that going to reflect on me, and how is that going to affect you? And is that disrespectful? Blah 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 blah. That kind of stuff. So what else? Yeah, so that was the only other multiverse movie other than the Marvel movies, and that's just because that's the story that they're telling right now. And The Flash is not your typical multiverse movie. For one thing, it's a fictional story. Um, True life nerds, I'm going to break it out to you. I am too, but and it's fun to think about things, but I'm also a literalist. Once this moment passes, it's not coming back. There's no way to go back and redo it. Time travel is not a real thing in the physical realm. If you're one of those enlightened people that can travel the astral plane and the spirit world, you might be able to do some of that, but yeah, a precognition. Yeah, if that exists, that's not the same thing as time travel, you know uh, post-cognition, that's not the same thing as traveling back into the past. That's just having vision into the past or vision into the future, or you know having cognition of the present, of what's going on the other side of the world just right now. uh, that's that's not teleportation. That's a psychic phenomenon altogether different, which might be just as made up. I don't know. But I'm just saying, for instance, having knowledge of the past or the future is not the same thing as traveling into the past or the future. Time travel is not a physical possibility. It's just not. Uh, the perception of time is relative, but the passing of events is not. Facts are facts, bro. There are no alternative facts. We're back to some politics. Oh, what else? Sure hope I get all this in here. One more thing I want to say. The the Flash has done just as well on its opening weekend as Aquaman, which was a highly praised movie. But then they're saying, "Oh, it's bombing the Flash." No, 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 no. Also, the Aquaman, uh, I saw it in 3D. Paid a lot of money. uh, so when it's available, a movie like that in 3D, and a lot more people are going to be able to pay a higher price to see it in 3D. But then there are other movies that are not being presented in 3D, but they're making just as much money. You want to consider that too, that you want to consider that curve, because if you could see a spectacle in 3D, you will see it in 3D. The day that I saw it, it wasn't available in 3D. So, that being said, if media news outlets about the media that we take in, movies, songs, and stuff like that, if they'll write towards a slant for the audience that they want to see, that should be practice for us when it gets to uh, thinking about the important things like how we feel about the world around us and the decisions that we make in the voting booths that are going to affect the policymakers that rule our lives. And we say they work for us and work for, but it's a symbiotic thing. We work for each other. They do a job for us, but we have to follow the laws that they put down for us, because that's the job that we give them. You make these policies, put them into law, and then we must abide by them until they are lawfully changed again. That's how it's supposed to work. And how we get that done is we get it changed by voting, and the people who say that it doesn't work are the people who don't get their way. If the vote doesn't work, if they don't get the decision that they want to get, then all of a sudden the system's rigged. Yeah, I mean there is some rigging in every system, but for the most part, no, we have a system that works if everybody that is able to get out and speak at that voting booth, you go vote. Uh, then we'll get the truest, because the greater numbers of votes that we have when it's time to vote, the closer we get to what our majority really does want. Fewer people that vote, we further away from what the majority really wants. So you know, get out there and do your part and vote, but also watch these news, because if they're going to go back and forth over unimportant stuff, Rolling Stone magazine, when they go to review music, uh, they write for their slant. Some of the Playboy used to write some political stuff, not just the girls, but you know what I mean. And they always wrote towards the slant that they leaned towards, that they needed to, because they want people to buy their magazine, so they want to be agreeable in those articles, and it was a way to influence people and shape their minds. Wasn't just the pictures, but some of those political articles. Kid you not, Sports Illustrated. Uh, they so don't just look at the headlines when you see this stuff, and don't just look at the news. Try to try to try to try to try to shave off the editorializing and the analyzing, and just try to look at what's presented as fact. Cast away opinion of the fact and form your own conclusion based on knowledge versus opinion, and based on experience, and by listening. And it's okay to listen to what other people have to say, what other people's views are, but let's not let other people tell us how we're supposed to think. Let's make up our own minds, and then we'll go to the voting booths. And that's about as political as I want to get. But that's this movie, what's happening with these movies back and forth, that demonstrates if they'll do it to movies, they'll do it to politics, they'll do it to everything. So, that being said, love and light. I love you guys. Good night.